Welcome back. It's now time to talk about the issue of fuel scarcity. And we've been joined in the program from Abuja City, Mr. Alabade Soumi. He's an energy expert. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Maybe you give us a synopsized version of what this round of scarcity is really all about, because we're hearing different things, from the issue of the mother vessel to daughter vessel, inability to bring in the commodity in terms of logistics and weather, and then the unofficial issue of whether there is a worry on the independent marketers or marketers about the coming upstream of Dangote Refinery, Dangote fuel that may crash prices at the end of the day. So there are all kinds of stories. Maybe you give us a synopsized version of what exactly is going on that we have to experience this yet again.
Okay, so because I'm not at the port, and you are not at the port, we can only rely on the official information from those who are managing the supply chain, what they tell us. So what the NNPC has said in a news release is that there was a thunderstorm which is affecting the ability to transfer the finished product from the mother vessel to the daughter vessel. In simple terms, there is a hitch in the supply chain. That is what they say. So, and if the independent marketers don't get the product, there's nothing for them to transport to the last mile. In other words, so if there's nothing at the depot, if there's insufficiency at the depot, they cannot get it to the last mile. So that is officially what it is. But the truth be told is that we owe it to ourselves as a nation and as people who are forward thinking that when there are issues within the supply chain, there is of necessity needs for redundancy. And what does redundancy mean? It just means options that are not necessarily used. So there is a reason why your car has an extra tire. It is not because when you are moving out on the road, you expect to have a flat tire. It is because peradventure there's a flat tire, the journey does not have to cease. So all the areas, all the bottlenecks that are within the supply chain, be it mother vessel or daughter vessel part, be it at the depot, be it transportation, there has to be some kind of redundancy for it so that these things can cease to be the issue. And when we do that, we will just be like other people that are forward thinking and who can solve our problems.
One would wonder that with the level of reserve that we have in terms of billions of barrels of oil and maybe trillions of cubic feet of gas and all of that, how come we're still talking about this kind of scenario in 2024? For a layman, that is his understanding. I have this thing in abundance, and although our refineries are not working, we shouldn't be hearing all of this.
Okay, so there's this, I think, movie that was in the 90s. It was like I said, water everywhere, but none to drink. So you can be surrounded by an ocean and not have drinking water, primarily because the water from the ocean needs to be desalinated, then processed for it to be drinkable. So the crude oil that you have in the ground is a potential. It is not the finished product. It needs to be extracted. So that's where the upstream activities goes in. It needs to be processed midstream. It needs to now be transported to you. Now, if for any reason those things don't come to place, you don't have fuel. So there is an understanding, and this thing is very important for Nigerians because there's always this part, whether it's in the power sector, whether it's in the oil and gas sector, is that I just want power. No, ignorance does not solve problems. Demand based on it. So there are certain fundamentals that we need to know so that we can put the appropriate amount of critical mass of pressure on the right places and so that those things can deliver. And so for that purpose, people need to understand that for a long time, our refineries had not been working. The advent of Dangote has brought in a change in perspectives. There is also pressure on the current the GCU of the NNPC for the local refineries to work. But on the basis of the combination of everything, we are expecting a change. But up until when it starts to function, when it starts to be integrated into the supply chain for final delivery, we're still going to be importing. So it is that final phase of importing that had an issue. And so it's important to know that so that we can always put the appropriate amount of pressure on the right place rather than just throw everything in the air and say we want a solution.
So does, for instance, the NNPC have like a reservoir somewhere where maybe in case anything happens at sea, just like we're seeing the thunder strike or thunderstorm or whatever it is called, we're not going to be stuck in this situation at this particular point. You are the expert, so I'm asking a layman's question.
So NNPC of their own have said that they have 30 days worth of reserves. So the question is, have we exhausted it? When did we start using the 30 days? Because I don't think that we have had 30 days of storms. But in addition to that, I was checking the meteorological report, and I think they said that throughout next week, like 5 days, there's going to be thunderstorms. So does that mean we're going to cripple the downstream operations? So those are questions that need to be asked. So, but in terms of the information that is available, what has been said is that we have 30 days of reserves. So I believe that that is part of what is being used, which is why the nation itself has not been grounded. Yes, there will be itches in a few places, but we also have to give to the credit that if you queue for a while, you still will get fuel and certain things will happen. So basically, there is a hitch in the supply chain process, but there seems to be some things available.
So I know this is a bit unofficial, but in business, there's something they call, I think, the first mover, which is the man who came into the market first, and then the market mover who comes in later to upset the entire system, maybe to break through by a certain pricing policy. We saw that with Dangote and diesel. And some people are alluding to the fact that part of what is going on is the fact that because of the inability of the NNPCL to give marketers refined product to sell, and they have to go to depots to buy, at higher prices. If Dangote has said by this month he's going to roll out the petrol from his refinery, and that fear over whether or not his prices may affect the ability to sell the ones they have at higher prices. I just wanted you to speak to all of that speculation.
Okay, so this now moves into the politics of the whole thing. And I say politics because, sincerely, there's a significant amount of politics within it. I do not think that the whole industry is going to be disrupted in the circumstances and in the way that is being narrated by Dangote, by Dangote Refinery. Yes, you talked about first mover advantage, which is the advantage that comes with the person that enters the market first. But you also talk about disruptive technologies, disruptive systems, disruptive companies, like you have in IT and all that. The energy industry is not really like the IT or the ICT sector. There are laws within thermodynamics that are as old as Napoleon. There are certain things that are not going to change overnight. Yes, there is always a positive effect to additional competition, but we need to also understand that we have been importing diesel for decades, and when there is going to be a disruption, in the sense that this disruption needs to be something that has to be proven to be consistent for a while. In other words, sustainable. The key word there is sustainable. So when there is a perspective by the refinery, Dangote Refinery in this case, it is always nice to also hear from the other side so that there's a balance. Because really, nobody analyzes his own situation and comes faulty out of it. And that is not taking anything away from the ingenuity, the consistency, the energy, and the courage that Dangote has exhibited for him to come up with the refinery, which to all intents and purposes is the biggest refinery in the world. But he's still going to meet with veterans in the industry, people who have done 25 years, some people who are even third generation in the industry. So it's not going to be like cement, it's not going to be like spaghetti. It's going to really meet some quality competition in the industry.
All right, that argument over competition and monopoly is also an argument around him as well, but I'm not going to delve into that. It's for another day. But what I want to ask is how much of forward sales agreement affects our own part of this whole ecosystem? Because the Dangote had raised alarm that he's not getting crude. And people are saying, well, the federal government has a responsibility to provide you that crude because of the JV agreement. He had to go and buy WTI, even if it's cheaper the logistics involved and all of that. So I want you to speak of how much is impacting the entire ecosystem in terms of our production ability, because we also understand that the government is also falling short in terms of funding for the production process itself, which affects the output.
Also, government has always been falling short, I mean, in the last probably 20 years. So that's probably not news. So when you want to, when you look at Nigeria as at today, we do about 1.25 million barrels per day. When you check the JV agreements or the production sharing quota, once the IOCs take their part, maybe we'll probably end with like half of that, like $750,000 per day. You will recall that the previous government had made forward sales on the crude oil, which means that some of the loans that was taken, particularly even the loans that was used for the elections, were based on the crude that we are yet to produce. So there's a significant amount of that goes into servicing those debts. There has also been one or two loans by this government, I think the one with IMF, which takes about 18% of our crude sales. So at the end of the day, you come up with about 200,000 barrels, which is what we use for our activities today. It is from there that our forex earnings come from, and it is part of the reason why we are not able to have enough forex for the naira. It should be understood that when you have a refinery like the capacity, like the one that Dangote has, it is also his own responsibility to ensure that his supply chain is sustained. So in other words, he has to look at options. If for any reason the NNPC that was relying on failed, then where is he going to get his supply from? And that is why he has to go abroad. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, that anyone can really do apart from breaking contracts to satisfy him. We have significantly low amount of crude, which is, by the way, responsible for 75% of our forex. And that cannot just be diverted to one person. That is the reality on the ground. People may not say it because of the implications, but it is the fact that for them to change that, people are likely to take Nigeria to court. There will be issues of credibility in the international market, because some of all those contracts, they are 20-year-old contracts, they are 30-year-old contracts, they are contracts of 15 years, which we have been doing, and we must do for us to have credibility in the market. So one of the things as an option way forward for the Dangote refinery is for him to also drill his own field. In other words, he should, because of his strategic importance, be given an oil field. That oil field he should drill and then pump the crude for himself.
Wow, that's a big one. So, I don't know. So you're saying literally that Dangote should literally swim with the sharks. So welcome to competition. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's the reality. You know, sometimes truth is not easy, but truth is what it is. I mean, I think it was Martin Luther King Jr. that said that you can squash the truth on the floor and stamp on it, but surely it will rise up again. The fact of the matter is that as at today, Nigeria cannot afford to give him the amount of crude that he wants. It is not about activism. It is about basic, fundamental economics and operational reality. Okay,
maybe with this information for those, everyone involved, and especially for Nigeria, for a proper frame of reference, maybe we just have to brace up for what we're facing at the end of the day, because this is more like energy security optimism has to be cautious, given the scenario you just painted. I must thank you, Mr. Alabode Showumi, energy expert, for bringing perspective to this conversation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here.